So our program today, as I've mentioned, could not be more timely. When you think about our focus last week on leadership lessons relating to AI and its impact on industries, well, one of the big industries that's been impacting is the film industry. And we're pleased today to have a distinguished panel, some of the leaders in this country in the film market. Jeff Stepikoff will be our moderator and will provide an overview of the industry. He's one of the leaders in this industry. He's been president and co-founder of Content Talent South, Georgia's premier talent management, production, and consulting company. He's also the founding executive director of the state of Georgia's innovative film and television workforce program, the Georgia Film Academy, which trains students for high-demand careers in this industry. Jeff was raised right here in Atlanta, Georgia, graduating from Woodward Academy before college and pursuing his graduate degrees. He then moved to Hollywood, of course, and began a career writing and producing film, television, and the digital entertainment. Jeff's an accomplished writer, producer, and an experienced academic with 33 years history in the entertainment industry that includes internationally recognized credits, leadership roles in content creation and production, and success as an author with over 1 million copies of his novels in print in 20 languages. Jeff will be introducing the panelists and will be providing with an overview of the Georgia Film Industry 2.0. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Stepikoff.
Thank you, President Yates, and good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. How is everyone? All right. I am so privileged and obviously excited to be up here today to talk to y'all about Georgia's film industry. In fact, I was just thinking about the few times that I was up here over the last 7 or 8 years, sharing with you all what we were going to do with film here in Georgia. How fun it is to be up here today and talk about what we've done with film in Georgia and what we're going to do next. So I'm super excited as well to have my friends and colleagues here to speak to what we're going to do next and what we're doing. But first, let me take a few minutes and share with you all where we are today and how we got here. I could do 20 minutes on the numbers, which I'm not going to do. And in fact, what I really want to do is summarize our industry in the simplest terms, which is when you talk about film in Georgia, there is no model. This may sound like hyperbole, but when you look at the growth that we've experienced here with our film industry, there's never been a story like this before. Okay, some numbers. Number 3 in the country for film and television production, number 5 in the world. And when you talk about major feature films, Georgia is number 1. But again, this growth has taken place at a rate where there's just no equal in any production community in the world. So why has this happened? 3 core reasons. The film tax credit is one of the primary drivers. The takeaway here when we talk about the film tax credit is that back in 2007, before the credit passed, there was $20 million that was spent by productions here in Georgia. This past fiscal year, $4.4 billion spent by productions here in our state. That's a 220x increase in 15 years. Remarkable. Number 2, infrastructure. There's 16, 17 major soundstage campuses all around our city and our state now. You know, there's over 120 sound stages in Georgia. It's just incredible. We're really neck and neck with Canada, the UK, California, New York. There's over 3 million square feet of soundstage space here when you talk about purpose-built, as well as the additional space that we're using. So when you talk about the infrastructure, the vendor support services, everything that we have here, we are a full, complete production destination. And of course, one of our most unique qualities is our workforce. The Georgia Film Academy started in 2015. We had about 154 students that started initially. Today, over 15,000 Georgians have been through the program, about 1,500 in union covered craft internships. It's a driver that's really unique for our state. If there's a single takeaway about our state's film academy, it's the spirit of partnership. Just think about it for a moment. The universities, all of them. The technical colleges, all of them. The production community, all of them. The labor unions. It's a story of partnership. And let me just put this idea in your head. This is how we roll here in Georgia. The spirit of partnership. That's really, in many ways, the secret sauce of our film industry. However, along with this three-legged stool, the credit, the infrastructure, and the workforce, and while we're neck and neck with all these other jurisdictions, New York and California, the UK, Toronto, when you look at the other two jurisdictions in our country, look how far we are away from them. $9 billion, according to the Economic Development Report from our state auditors, is what Georgia did. And yet when you look at our closest competitors, New York, nearly $15 billion, and when you put entertainment and media into that, $82 billion in economic activity. California, $63 billion, and when you put entertainment and media into that, about $160 billion in economic impact. Look at the difference. So why is that? And the simple answer is because Georgia is a film factory. For the most part, we've been making other people's movies, and we've been killing it. But just think about this for a moment as we talk about what we're going to do next. We do very little development here so far. We do very little pre-production here so far. Distribution, marketing, streaming, the wealth of the industry really hasn't been here so far. We've been in the production business, a little bit in the post-production business. California's getting about $24 for every tax credit. Georgia's getting about $7. Let me give you a good example. Avengers Endgame, shot here in Georgia at Trilith, $356 million spent by that production, of which we captured the vast majority of it here in Georgia. But when you look at the nearly $3 billion that this motion picture did, that's about 90% of the project. We didn't capture it because that wealth, for the most part, is going out of state, generally to California. So, what should we do about it? Well, I'm very excited to hear what my two guests have to say about this, what our two colleagues have to say about this. Very briefly, we're at a moment of great disruption right now. And if there was anything else that could have created more opportunity for us, more disruption, imagine a labor stoppage. From my perspective, unlike anything that we've seen. So in the simplest terms, and I'm going to take 30 seconds and explain it, when I was working on shows as a writer like Dawson's Creek, we would have anywhere from 8 to 12 writers working on that show, and we would have an order for series of anywhere from, 25 to 26 episodes. So writers could have a long career doing this kind of work. Writers were trained, and they brought great content and professional training to the business. We talked at the table about our favorite motion pictures. Many of those motion pictures were conceived by and written by talent that came up in these writers' rooms. Today, what's happening is the streaming media companies, notably Netflix, Amazon, and Apple tech companies, they have a different vision of how the industry should run, and a viable one. That vision, of course, means shorter episodic orders and fewer writers. Their perspective is, hey, we can put Mike White in a room and have White Lotus and have him write all the episodes. We don't need a staff, which makes sense. On the other hand, the Writers Guild and the Actors Union as well, SAG-AFTRA, they're telling us, where's the next generation of talent going to come from? So what does this mean for all of us? It means, from my perspective, opportunity here in Georgia, this post-strike talent diaspora. We're a global production center. We've got an incredible quality of life, incredible affordability, a business-friendly environment, initiatives like the Trilith Institute, which is training talent, first offices of best-in-class representation moving here to our great state. So, do we want to be, moving forward, the Hollywood of the South, Yollywood, a production destination? Or do we want to be the entertainment industry's new, full, and sustainable global epicenter? Something to think about and something to talk about. And again, if there was any harbinger about the future of our great state and this industry, I suggest it's the talent that has moved here from the best-in-class management production company, 3 Arts Entertainment, and the best-in-class talent agency, United Talent. So I want to introduce to you all my friends and colleagues who now live here in Georgia, Jermaine Johnson and Steve Cohen. Gentlemen, as I make my way over, let me ask you guys to introduce yourselves and speak specifically about what brought you here to Georgia. Jermaine?
Well, my mother would like to take credit. Jermaine Johnson, pleasure to meet you. I run the 3 Arts Atlanta office. I've been at the company for about 12, 13 years now. My core competency has been writers and directors, so I'm a big advocate for creating original content really at the ground level, and that's something that Jeff and I have talked about a lot. And what brought me here was, I think, seeing the opportunity that Jeffrey has seen for quite some time, but being here, I came to visit my mother to 2020, might have been 2019. We were just kind of easing out of the pandemic, and she lives down in McDonough. And I could just see how this community had kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And the big concern for me was something that Jeffrey just touched on, is that if bigger companies don't come down here and really plant a flag, it will stay just a production destination and not turn into a place where the actual content springs from. And it was really important to me, having a lot of family and friends here already, to come down here and be a part of that shift. And so I just kind of went, talked to my partners and said, hey, we need to have a footprint here. And in a matter of 2 months, it went from we need to have a footprint here to me figuring out where I was going to live and set up shop. So I've been here for almost 2 years now, and have been having a pretty fantastic time digging in with everybody and starting to, well, not even starting to, continuing to build what you guys have all been building for quite some time now.
Awesome.
So is this working? Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Don't hesitate.
I won't. So my name's Steve Cohen. I'm a partner at United Talent Agency, one of the largest global agencies. I've been there nearly 20 years. I went to school here at Emory and jumped in a car and took the 20 to the 10 all the way west and stopped in Beverly Hills, but started in the mailroom there. Traditionally, I've represented actors, comedians, musicians. And when we talked about what's happening in Atlanta, which, listen, the truth is most of the people who do our job are LA and New York people that haven't spent a lot of time here, haven't done that thing. Obviously, we know that there's a huge production hub here, and it is best in class. But to us, we just felt like there was more happening within this artistic and creative community. So, of course, with the film and TV incentive, we've got at all times 100 or 150 actors living in Inman Park or wherever in town, and that has created, through this incentive, this incredible economic driver that's buoyed all of the incredible things that are already happening here. But for us, we have 40 plus practice areas, and some of the most important growth areas for our business and our company are music, sports, digital talent, sort of corporate strategy and entertainment marketing, and fine arts. And if you think about all of the incredible things that are happening here and all of the different zones that are huge growth areas in this place, we thought to ourselves, how come there isn't a huge agency that's already here? And the truth is I went to school here many years ago, and I participated in the community and been a part of the community and knew people here, and not that many people had, right? So that's a competitive advantage for us. And we sort of set about, this would have been nearly 2 years ago, actually building an office and actually building it out. And Rich Paul from Clutch Sports and UTA Sports is one of my partners in this. Arthur Lewis, who runs our fine arts practice and is creative director for UTA Fine Arts, basically got our heads together with some input, some input from friends that I have here, and we put together a business model. And I'd be lying if I told you, oh, of course we knew this was going to happen and we'd be here doing it, but it was a lot of hard work, perseverance, grit, toughness. And the truth is the way that we've been embraced by the community, and I'm looking around this room and I see a lot of friendly faces, but every single person understood the mission and helped us accomplish it. And I think, Jeffrey, you sort of were saying this level of cooperation that exists in this city and in this state was an unmatched and unparalleled phenomenon for me, because I got here and I was like, okay, I'm just another talent agent, but there isn't any. Like, we're the first two very serious people from very serious companies that are participating. And we'll get into it a bit later, Jeffrey, but the idea of companies coming in and spending money here and then going home and taking the product and exporting it from LA, that's going to be done.
Yes.
We're going to have a development structure here. We're going to help young people that have an idea. You know, Spike Lee could be working, the next Spike Lee could be working at some gas station in Decatur, but doesn't know how to write a script or doesn't have the means to get the laptop to do it. And I think that there's a general education that's required for young people. And I want to talk about mentorship a bit later too, Jeffrey, is sort of the lessons in leadership, which I think is more critical now than ever. But if we can create programs that just shed light on how this works and what we do and why, that will be success. And that will be our community effort. And I see Andrew, but Saltzman and Steve Koonin in our very first meal said, this is a community-driven place, and you've got to figure out what your participation will be. And for us, it's helping kids professionalize their passions in the arts and in sports. And this place is an amazing sort of nutrient-rich environment in which to do that, and we are going to.
So I want to give y'all an opportunity to speak even more specifically, if you'd like, about what your missions are. Let me make sure that the table is very well set here. As I'm listening to you guys, and again, reflecting on where we are at this time and in this moment, I'm thinking about, 2015, 2016, when we all used to talk about the work at the Film Academy and the work with some of our studios that were getting started. And a lot of what we were all talking about was, someday, if we do our work well, we'll have the talent management, the agencies and the managers that will come to town. And here we are. We're doing it. I think we've called this panel Georgia Film 2.0, right? So it's difficult to imagine a better way to frame what we're doing right now. And so to that end, and we'll get to some of the things you want to talk about, Steve, can you all speak with as much specificity as you'd like about your specific missions? Oh, and don't forget to explain the difference between a manager and an agent.
Dress code.
Well said. It's true.
But more specific, I'll start with the second question last. But specifically for me in 3 Arts and my partners there, it really is creating that original content driver, the thing that makes this place not just a destination, but a place where we are actually exporting content from. To drill down even further than that, it does touch on what Steve's talking about, right? Tapping in with the creative community, at every level. There's going to be a lot of education because there is a lot of resources that weren't here before, right? They're actually being built in real time. So it is getting into that creative community, taking the ideas, shaping them, really crafting them to a place where we do feel like they're saleable in the market, and then creating the partnerships down here to do that, to say, okay, let's take this idea for a television show that we really think is viable, create an actual piece of development material around it, educate that creator on how to be when they go in the room, how to sell themselves, how to sell their idea, how to bring that passion, and then say, okay, we can go sell this thing. We can go, take it out to the marketplace at large, your traditional, your Netflix, your Amazons, all those places, or we can partner with a studio. We can partner with a production company like Content Talent South, right? And say, okay, let's add a package here that actually allows us to create, call it, a 10-minute sizzle reel that we can produce at a price down here, very, very inexpensively down here. And then when you take that piece of material to the marketplace, you own that IP, right? And typically, to the structure that you were discussing earlier, if you take an idea to Netflix and Netflix buys it, they're going to say, okay, we're running it through Netflix Studios, we own this IP, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. It's going to be more money than you've probably ever made, but you're not going to own it in perpetuity. And a lot of young creators take that deal because it's more money than they've ever made. But then they wake up one day and they see their show getting licensed out all over the country, and the check they got for it is the last check they're ever going to get for it, unfortunately. Or it's going to be very small incremental checks from there on out. If you can really create a model here, which we've done to, kind of really well at 3 Arts in LA, with our clients, we've produced everything from The Office to Insecure to Parks and Recreation to Master of None to, I could keep going, I keep forgetting, 30 Rock, but, throw a cat, you'll hit a show that we've produced. So we've created that model there, but to do it here, we'll really create this equity stake for the creators here. where they don't have to leave in order to really actualize a show and actually own a stake in it that they can then reinvest in the community. And to your point about capturing more of that spend, capturing more of that investment, that's how you do it. It's you go out and you say, instead of selling you this show and selling you all the rights, now we're going to license it to you. And you pay us a license fee, we own it. If we want to resell it another time to another buyer after 10 years when our license agreement is up, great. But now that's a piece of IP, that's an asset that that person owns here in perpetuity. And that's really what my intention is. That's what, I've built with my clients that I create with in LA, and that's what I'm starting to build with the clients that I've been working with here.
Awesome. Steve, you want to speak with specificity about what your mission is?
Yep. The first thing, the answer to the question is, the technical difference between an agent and a manager is as follows. The Association of Talent Agents, which is our governing body, and the guild agreement sort of define what we can do and can't do. And the one thing that we can do, and managers technically aren't, is procure work and make a deal. That is the technical difference. Historically, what that means is that managers maybe are a little bit more in the day-to-day, they're a little bit more in their personal affairs, whereas agents technically go find them jobs. And what you realize doing what we do is some managers are more agent-like, some agents are more manager-like, but there is a spectrum. But that's the technical difference. And the sort of important part of that, more important part of that question is, listen, I could represent Kevin Hart from Midtown Atlanta just like I could from Beverly Hills. It wasn't really about that. What we sort of did during the COVID period is a lot of thinking about what we do and why. And in the world, I think that what COVID taught us is that there was a decentralization happening out of the biggest cities. And for us specifically, it's really LA way out ahead, and New York and London are kind of these big entertainment hubs. And we realized that that doesn't have to be. Hollywood and LA want everything in Hollywood and LA because there's this gatekeeper mentality where a young person that I was maybe referencing earlier has to get on a plane or get on a bus or drive their car to LA in order to get in line with 10,000 other artists to try to get their script sold, get an agent in the sports world, gain an audience with a buyer in the buyer community like Netflix or Warner Brothers or something like that. We are traditionally advocates for talent, and there's all kinds of talent in the world. It's actors, it's athletes, it's executive talent, it's all kinds of things, but we're really good at spotting it. And if we can open the aperture and create a different home, a new home for some of these artists to go out there and make their thing, that's success. And for whatever reason in the history of this city, there's this deep commitment to artistic integrity and building things. And because of my background in the city and knowing a little bit about that, and the incredible foundation that's been laid, given the tax credit over, I guess, 2005, 2009, you guys perfected it, 2008, and now there's an incredible infrastructure to go make things. But we look at exactly what Jermaine is saying for that set of clients, but our business has gone from, the core business to us is film and TV production, right? And we represent actors, writers, directors, producers, non-writing producers who go and make film and TV. That has historically been our core business. Starting in 2015, UTA acquired the largest independent music agency, and we were off to the races. And so music, sports, a lot of those other things, but also publishing and video games and streaming talent. It is now more of like a 50-50 split between our core business and our non-core businesses. And if you just think about the way that technology disrupts that, you can get out in front of it or you're just gonna fold. And for us, having this new home, new people, new businesses, new business partners, we thought about what were adjacent businesses that we can help build. So when we acquired that music agency, I sort of was one of the senior talent guys helping transition the Jonas Brothers and Guns N' Roses and DJ Khaled, a Chance the Rapper, into film, TV, publishing, video games, all that stuff. In 2011, I started a digital talent department at my company, or 2010, which was basically, back then, YouTube stars. Now it's sort of influencers that encompass TikTokers and people that are famous on Twitter and all of those social media platforms. So we are going to build in town, which is, I guess you heard it here first, but we're going to build a digital fan convention in town sometime later this fall or early winter that if you think about sort of this through line of education, we're going to teach a bunch of young people here, and it's probably 16 to 30-year-olds, how to create their own economy, how to create a business that is started here, they can do for themselves, and can build everything else that's already happening here. And that means we'll get, however many influencers here, and we'll get some of the large businesses that are run by some of the people in this room to create activation opportunity around sports, comedy, cooking, streaming, music. And what that means is we exist in the center of a world where we know talent. We can get the most important people in music and sports and comedy into this room. And then we also know people in the the business communities that can come and activate around those. And if we can act as the center of one of these transactions, that's what agents are. If you just look up what that is, that's what it is. And so we've got that. We've got kind of a production and development project that we're thinking about. And then the other thing, which is totally, UTA is the only agency that has participated in the fine arts world, which there is a massively institutionally backward, in my opinion, situation where gallerists find artists and take 50% of their earnings, which is absurd. But we aim to disrupt that. We aim to turn Atlanta into a global art city. And the way that you do that, here's a great fact. 2% of millionaires collect art. 2%. And the reason, in my opinion, why is what's the last thing that an affluent person wants to feel? And that's dumb. It is a very high barrier to, it's true. That's true. But there's a very high barrier to entry in the art world because nobody knows anything about art because it's just hard. So we're going to help. And the way that you make all of that better is you normalize the viewing of art by regular people. So we are going to work with large businesses in town to underwrite the exhibition of art on the Beltline, in State Farm Arena, in the football stadium, so that people can just see it.
All right. So guys, a few more questions, and just to give us all a heads up, we've got about 5 minutes until we're going to take some questions from the audience. So let's summarize this great work briefly. And to that end, can you guys tell us all what you think we're doing well, what you think we're doing right, and specifically, what do you think is unique about Georgia's talent base? What do you think? What do you think special, if you will, about Georgia talent?
I would say what you're doing well is something that even Stephen touched on, is that it's such a community here, and it's not really gate kept. It really is welcoming and open, and as long as you're here with the right intentions and really kind of an ambitious attitude, everybody will find a way to help you, and they'll want to help you. And that's something that you can't buy that. Like you go to LA, you go to New York, you can tell where the tension is. You can tell exactly how far you can go before somebody's going to say you can't come in this room. And that's something that is so just heartwarming here. And it's like something I realized when I was a kid, but to be here as a fully formed adult, or a facsimile of, has been pretty fantastic. And then the talent pool here, my favorite thing about the talent pool here is that they haven't learned the bad habits, right? There isn't this sense of entitlement, right? I used to famously say in LA that I don't like signing kids from USC. And there's no offense to that school. The START program is fantastic. It gave us Ryan Coogler, it gave us Stephen Capel, it gave us a bunch of great filmmakers. But I would meet young kids from USC, and they would come in the room and they would say, okay, I've always wanted to be a writer since I was 5 years old. I wrote for the school newspaper. I wrote for the, I can't even think of the name of the Trojan. I wrote for the Trojan, and I went to the START program, and now I'm a writer. And I'd say, okay, but what have you lived? What are you writing about? Like, what is the story you actually want to tell? Because your whole life up until now has just been about trying to be a writer and not actually having any experiences to write about. And you meet people here that have lived a million lives already, and they're 22, and they decided that they got into crypto when they were 17, or they were a professional gamer for a little bit, and they've got such interesting, colorful stories. And then you just ask them, okay, what story do you want to tell? And it just pours out of them. And now all I have to really teach is structure. Yeah. And that makes my life actually pretty easy instead of having to teach you voice.
Yes. Steve, what do you think we're doing right here? And what do you think about Georgia talent?
I'll tell a little anecdote. So one of the other first meals I had here was with Mayor Dickens. And we're sitting there talking, we're getting to know each other, and he basically said, and Jermaine just sort of used this phrase, but he basically said, Atlantans think of themselves as second-class citizens in many ways around the big cities in the world. And I thought to myself, that doesn't make any sense, because I went to school here and it was swaggy and cool and fun, and people are so smart and so interesting. And so what attributes, or why is that?
Yeah.
And he said, for years, people have come here in the arts community and taken our culture and left with it. And we recognize when big institutions come here and plant a flag and invest in us and build a big office and buy homes here, and for that, the people of the city will give you everything. And I'm sitting there like, what is this guy talking about? Really? Okay. And it completely was proven true. And the answer to your question is the people of the city are its greatest asset. And people here are smart and interesting and intuitive and open to learning and open to building and growing. And that, I don't want to say it's the biggest surprise, but it's been the most refreshing thing, where I can come here and talk about what we're doing and everyone says, great, let's help you do that. And there's a level of cooperation and even co-opetition amongst other people here that compete, obviously, but that has been the best part. And what that will do is attract talent. And people who come here and work in sort of the creative communities and live in Peachtree City and work below the line, if we keep doing what I just mentioned, more people will come here. And I think that what we're going to see is, I mean, you just look at whatever migration patterns happening in our country. People are leaving LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, and moving to Phoenix, cities in Texas, Tennessee, Atlanta, and South Florida. And I think that we can really emerge out of the creative sort of ecosystem as a real destination for more talent to amplify all the amazing things that talent have already done here.
All right. So should we take some questions, John? Okay. I have a lot more, so if you guys don't have them. I think the protocol is to come to the mic. Thanks, guys.
In the 19th century, Georgia created great wealth by growing cotton with free labor and free land, sending it to the north and to Manchester, England, and then buying back the finished product. That's sort of like a colony. Today, my Tesla was both designed and manufactured in California. However, in contrast to the first point, the software to drive it comes from Atlanta. Would you say that's a perfect analogy? Both good and bad. Where we were, kind of where we are today, but the second example is a message of hope.
Do you guys want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The way that sort of metaphor manifested with me was Hong Kong, right? No one would say that Hong Kong is a fashion capital.
Yeah.
Everything gets made there. And so a lot of wealth is not created, built, fostered there. But we have the opportunity to change that. It's literally what we do. We represent the people that make the most interesting and best creative projects in the world. And we are going to attract more people who can actually build it. So the answer is yes, absolutely, that's right. And we look at that as a big problem to solve.
You want to speak to it, Jermaine?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Steve's absolutely right, and I think that it's really apt because it's when you realize, and it's the idea of waking up and realizing that all of the tools are here, and you're giving them away. And once you can wake up and realize that the infrastructure is here, right? When you realize that you have the talent, right? The three pillars of like a functioning entertainment industry, right? Talent, studio infrastructure, and then producers to kind of connect the whole thing together. We have all three of them. We just have to be able to make them work in an ecosystem, and that's what we're here to do. So I think that's the fun part of realizing that, like, oh, we have been exporting the goods and then buying it back, unfortunately, but now we can actually own a real piece of that in a way that's meaningful.
Love it.
I want to put a point on that too. What that means is, yes, we have the capability to do it, but what's required is local stakeholders. If anybody's interested in building film and TV projects, we can help you do it. And we are creating a facility for that, but we need people in this room and abroad, and more broadly in Atlanta, to also want to be a part of it. And that's big corporations, it could be individuals. We can help you make these projects, especially if you have a specific thing that you want to do. come talk to us. We're not hard to find, but that is important to us.
Yes, it's a good lead into the question I was going to ask. You've all mentioned the tax credit, the film tax credit, in your slide with the exponential increase in growth once we had it. As you are probably all acutely aware, there's a lot of chatter in the legislature about slimming it down or getting rid of it. And
There
even,
is?
and there's even a study committee. So one of the criticisms that you hear is that we needed it to build the infrastructure. And then, of course, now we have a lot of studios and physical infrastructure. So help us understand why the credit is still important now for this next phase of growth.
I can do an hour on that, but I'm going to turn it over to our
I figured
colleagues
you
here.
could.
Do you guys want to take that?
I would say it's because infrastructure is not the only thing. I think, again, you can, and it's honestly what Jeff touched on earlier, and we've been talking about a lot, is that having the infrastructure does solidify Georgia as a hub. But just as a hub does not mean that we've actually captured where the real growth driver is, which is content creation and all of that, and really being able to invest in the creative community in a way that basically gives us real foundational support. And the last thing you want to do is basically, and I hate to use this analogy, but declare victory in the Super Bowl at halftime, right? Sorry.
Too soon.
But you all understand exactly what I mean, right? And that's exactly it, because there is now this turning point, and I think we're all looking at the decentralization of this business in a meaningful way. And it started with the pandemic, and I think it's compounding with the strike, because a lot of people in LA and New York are starting to look at their cost of living and where they want to do business, realizing that they don't have to do their business in LA or New York in order to thrive and survive. And they're going to want to start to look at Austin, Atlanta, all of these different cities. So we're in a place right now where we have great momentum, and I think there is a situation where if we cap it and we start to kind of look like we're closing our doors to the entertainment industry, that they will shift to other cities, whether it be Austin, Nashville, any of the other cities that Stephen's brought up.
We have about 5 minutes left, guys. Steve, you want to take 30 seconds on that?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is it's a differentiator. It runs business this way, okay? There is this incredible creative community that's been built around that. I would say it differently than Jermaine, obviously, but let's just keep the foot down on the gas and let's keep going. That said, UTA is deeply committed to Atlanta and to Georgia. Film and TV is a big part of it for us, but it's all those other things. It's sports, it's music, it's art, fine art, it's corporate strategy, it's digital talent. We're building here, and there's so much happening with the airport and everything else that we put roots down and we're here. And we feel like Atlanta over the next, Jay said this to me, I guess last week, over the next 100 years of what can happen in this city is a really powerful thing, and we want to be a part of that.
David?
A couple of years ago, Will Smith moved production that he was involved in out of Georgia because a voting rights law was passed here that some folks thought could impact voting rights. There is a disconnect between, quite often, the creative community that comes here and some of the things that come out of our legislature, whether it's on trans rights, guns, abortion, et cetera. Is the industry now at a point where it doesn't matter what the legislature does, or are there things that make you shiver?
Steve, you want to take 30 seconds on that? Jermaine?
It matters what the legislature does. That said, I think it was Tyler Perry that in that specific moment, the movie was Emancipation, that was an Apple film.
Yeah.
Tyler Perry basically said, don't punish the hardworking people of Atlanta and Georgia because of something like that, right? And obviously it was an important moment and an important time, but I think if we can keep people working, we can get people to work, we can build and grow their sort of capabilities and their skill set that uniquely suits them, I think that's a really important driver for economically and otherwise for the creative community here and the larger business community.
30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. But I think, what the interesting thing to me is, and it's something that I've spoken a lot about with my partners in LA and my colleagues in New York, is that at the end of the day, yes, the legislature matters, but there's something special about being here that's been interesting to me. It's probably one of the last bastions of bipartisanship. And I think that's something that is widely important to, you see guys like Bob Iger and Ted Sarando stick their foot in their mouth on occasion because they realize that they have complex and complicated thoughts about a lot of these different, pieces of legislation. And what I've realized here is that everybody's open to the conversation, at least. Like, it's reasonable conversation, reasonable dialogue. We can disagree and we can find a way forward. And I think that attitude has been more important to any of the business opportunities that have been here than anything else. So I don't think it's really going to scare people away as long as they know that their voice can be heard and they're just not going to be shouted down. And I think that's what I've really enjoyed about being here, right? You see, you can go down, during the election, I went down a block in my neighborhood and saw Kemp signs, Stacy signs scattered all over. Yep. And you realize that these people are neighbors, their kids probably go to the same schools, and they weren't, it wasn't Hatfields and McCoy shooting across the street.
Partnership is our secret sauce.
And that's what I love.
Billy, I think you're going to be our last question.
Jeff, Sharon talked a little bit about the tax credit, but just to ask a question to you directly, I deal with a number of high-income earners who utilize the tax credit, and the pricing on those has gone from about 10% benefit, 90 cents, to about 5 or 4% benefit at 95 or 96%. Is that concerning to you, or is that just an indication of the widespread acceptance of the tax credit program broadly?
Well, personally, it's annoying to me because I want to use the credit as well. But I also know, and this comes from economic development, that my understanding is there's just been a backup in how the audits are being done, which frankly, as I understand it, is healthy for our business. That spread should increase back to where it was a few years ago. So hang in there, Billy.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Let's give this panel a great hand. I know we have some additional questions. What we'll try to do is please come up afterwards, thank the panelists. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer the questions. Remember our upcoming programs. Next week, Governor Brian Kemp, please make sure to register. August 7th, we have Director Kim Cheadle with the U.S. Secret Service. And on August 14th, Alan Shaw. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.